the UN SDGs, Ria?
Not much as I'd like to, I think.
Well, there's a set of sustainable development goals that have been imposed by the United Nations. Sustainability has been a very large focus in the world, and this movement has captured industries today too. So all of us in the end are working towards sustainability.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Our next radical reform does something similar too. We introduced Punit Lalbhai, a distinguished leader and the vice chairman of Anup Engineering and Arvind Limited. He oversees the company's manufacturing sectors encompassing textiles, advanced materials, and engineering within the Lalbhai Group. Driven by a deep commitment to sustainability, Mr. Lalbhai has devoted his career to balancing business growth with environmental responsibility. He leads transformative projects including sustainable cotton cultivation with 90,000 farmers and pioneering efforts in circularity, recycling, and carbon mitigation. Mr. Lalbhai's dedication to conservation is evident through his roles in the Wildlife Trust of India and Tiger Watch. As a longtime practitioner and volunteer trainer of heartfulness meditation, Mr. Lalbhai amplifies mindful leadership, bringing integrity and purpose to his endeavors. It is my pleasure to invite Mr. Lalbhai onto the stage.
Morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, talking about a subject that is extremely close to my heart. I have the extreme privilege to be part of a company and a group that's more than 100 years old. And having survived 100 years means that at some point you would have had to have thought radically and differently. The company was started as part of the Swadeshi movement. In 1897, the first textile mill was established. Up until the 70s, we were into Indian traditional fabrics. Then came denim. We were the first to bring denim to India. Then we changed by becoming a brands and retail company, and today we are going through a transition to becoming a technical textiles company. So a lot of change. I'm very glad that Arjun spoke before me because he set the context up beautifully for me. I'm not going to talk about radical innovation in business, but I'm going to talk about radical innovation in the context of the business. If you look at textiles, it's a huge opportunity waiting for India. It's already a $165 billion market. And China, which has almost 3 times the exports of India in textiles, is decoupling from most of the consumption countries. So a lot of business is going to come India's way. It's the second largest employer after agriculture in the country. So it has national importance. But there are some parts of textiles that are not so good. In terms of our resource consumption, we are only behind power and steel in terms of our water usage and our carbon intensity. The first impression that comes to anybody's mind when they think about textiles is, sweatshop. Huge amounts of labor, huge amount of pollution happening. You think of places like Narol where the water runs red. So we have a really, really negative impression. And therein lies the opportunity for radical change. How does one take this industry that's so important from an employment generation perspective and think about sustainability, think about conservation, and think about using this radical thinking, radical revolution, radical change to absolutely turn the impression of the industry on its head? We started thinking about sustainability around 2010, 2011 in a very serious way. And we figured out that there are these 6 to 7 inputs that are key to our business. Of course, governance and money, people, are absolutely important to keep the wheels going round. But then come the environmental sort of parameters. And I'm going to take two examples today. When one thinks of environmental protection, when one thinks of pollution, when one thinks of waste, typically the industry reaction is that it's a cost and I must do the bare minimum required to be compliant, to be just above what is absolutely required by law. What we did is we said that let's not think that way. Let's think completely differently. So the first example I want to take is around water. And we use as much water as the city of Ahmedabad, city of 7 million people, needs to drink every day. We use the drinking water of 70 lakh people. The number of the meters of textiles that we produce every year can wrap the diameter of the earth 7 to 8 times. So when Arjun said about taking, textiles takes a lot from the environment. And we are only 2% of the overall production or 3% of the overall production in India. So you can imagine how much textiles is taking. So when we started our first largest complex of textiles in Asia, we said that we cannot take so much water. Let us start recycling. So we were the first company in Asia to start using reverse osmosis. The systems you have for drinking water in India, in your homes, to start recycling water in textiles. It was an extremely painful process, many roadblocks. But after a lot of hard work, innovation, and persistence, we've developed a zero liquid discharge system that's probably the lowest cost in the world. And today, 30,000, we use this 30,000 cubic meters, all of it, 100% is recycled. When we use water in textiles, it's running in a closed loop, but there are wet-dry cycles in textiles. So we lose about 10% of the water. So what we did was we set up a system, a partnership with the city of Ahmedabad to take the wastewater of the city, all the toilet water, building complexes, from STPs in the city. We take that dirty water, we treat it, and we make up that 10%. So there is zero fresh water used except for drinking. Taking it a step further, the biggest enemy to wastewater treatment in textiles is salt. When you do reverse osmosis, you are essentially pushing water through a membrane and you're getting clean water, but what is being left over is very salty water. So at the end of this recycling loop, once you've recycled 90% of the water, that 10% of the water has more salt, twice as much salt as that in seawater. So we developed a process to be able to extract this salt, to have this salt 97% pure, and reuse the salt in the dyeing process. So we created a closed loop for the salt as well. Now, after having done all this work, we learned so much about effluent treatment, and this costs more. So this is way above and beyond what the law requires. And our t-shirt, for example, is 10 cents more expensive because we are doing this recycling. Now, because we did all this, and because of all the learning, what happened for us is that we were able to float a new company. And now we have more than 300 installations outside of our company, helping other companies recycle their wastewater, helping steel plants, pharmaceutical plants, leather plants, chemical plants recycle their water. And we recycle or treat more than 10x the water of the city of Ahmedabad outside our premises. And this business more than compensates for that 10 cents more that we have to charge for our t-shirts. So difficult situation of not wanting to extract water and take water from the ground, leading to a zero liquid discharge solution, leading to an environmental business, and then being recognized by some of our customers as being leading water stewards. Now they've started saying that this 10 cents is not that expensive. Let's collaborate. Help us save 10 billion liters of water. So with Gap Inc., which is our largest customer, we formed this Center of Excellence on Water, where there will be research done on the next generation of improvements of water in industry. There will be testing done. There will be repository of knowledge created. We are working in the farm to try and conserve water, which is my second example. So the point I'm trying to drive is that thinking about a cost, thinking about what minimum I need to do, can you change it on its head and say that let me do the best I can and make the most of that opportunity. The second example is around farming. Cotton is our largest raw material. If you look at the water in textiles, I was talking about all the drinking water of Ahmedabad needing to be used in textile manufacturing. If you look at a pair of jeans, you need 80 liters to make a pair of jeans in the factory. But to grow the cotton for that one pair of jeans, you need 3,000 liters. So actually, water in farming is an order of magnitude higher. And how do we address that? Is how we started thinking. Also, Arjun talked about carbon, that 5 degrees. Farming is an very, very intensive carbon emitting process, and our country is an agricultural country. When you till the soil, you emit nitrogen dioxide, which is, has a greenhouse gas potential of many times that of carbon dioxide. You use pesticides, you use fertilizers. 50% of all pesticides produced in India go into cotton, which occupies only 10% of the agricultural area. So cotton is a very, very dirty crop. It's a very water-intensive crop. So what we said is, let's change how cotton is farmed. So we farm cotton, we help farmers convert their farming practices into sustainable practices, less tilling, only make a hole for the seed, do cover crops, do nitrogen fixation, increase the soil carbon, and eliminate pesticides and fertilizers as much as possible. Yes, cotton ends up costing more, but we pay the farmers a premium. So their soil is improving and they're getting higher money for their product. What we get is, this attracts our customers. Our customers can get to tell extremely good stories. Today marketing is all about storytelling. And it's all about telling genuine stories, because now the end consumer is becoming very concerned about greenwashing. People want to know, people want to be able to track and trace and verify that all the claims being made by their product companies are actually true. So what we do is we give them this traceability. We show them how farmers' lives are changing. We show them how farmers are taking control of their own soil health, of their own yields, of their own product. And they are able to communicate it to the end consumer. And what happens for us is that we get consistent orders. So if somebody has invested in this supply chain, they're likely to give us more orders. So that last photograph on the right is the inner pocket lining of Banana Republic's rapid movement chino, which mentions that it's made out of cotton from small farmers in Madhya Pradesh that are changing their farming practices. So taking again a large problem where this 2-degree, 5-degree change, being able to change practices to where we can possibly avert that change, and aligning it to business where it's a win-win-win for farmers, industry, and the brand itself. That's a way to take a problem and think about it in a very radically different way. So these were two examples that I thought that represented radical change. I think, I would like to also use this opportunity to talk about one more thing, which is this, one Arvind doing all this, what difference does it make in the world? We are less than 2% market share. And we get very enamored by this, that theek hai, badi cheez kar li, we are doing this, we are doing that. But unless this change happens at a global level, we are not going to be in time to avert that 5-degree temperature rise. So I was privileged to be part of two organizations, Cascale, which is an organization that represents 40% of the total turnover of textiles globally. We came together to create a common measure of sustainability. And you see this graph in the middle. If you see this graph, there are these gray lines, and then there is that bar. So that gray line is Arvind's performance. That gray horizontal line is Arvind's performance versus the average. So we publish that for all companies. And just by publishing that and wanting that gray line to be higher, companies are making investments. So we are creating a race to the top for everybody to go higher on sustainability. Then we found out that people know what needs to be done. People want to change. But the parts of the supply chain that need to make the change don't have the financial resources to make that change. So there's this other organization called the Apparel Impact Institute that is creating a collective platform for investment. So 1/3 of the money comes from philanthropy, 1/3 of the money comes from the brands who have the buying power, and only 1/3 of the money then the supply chain needs to invest to make the change. So if we are able to do this collective action, no part of the supply chain, and generally what happens, farmer has the maximum burden to change, followed by manufacturers that don't make enough money, and then the brands who have all the buying power. So a collective action platform, it equalizes the responsibility so that the entire supply chain can take the responsibility for change. And what this AII has done is that it has got about $110 million of commitments over the next 5 years and unlocked $2 billion of commitments in financial instruments to actually invest back. And that starts giving you hope that it's not just one Arvind Lighthouse project that's making the change. We can do it collectively together. So I'm a firm believer and I'm an absolute optimist that yes, this 5 degrees is a huge problem, but if people like you who are sitting in this audience take it upon themselves that I'm going to think differently, I'm going to think radically, then the future can be very bright. Just a plug for textiles. Textiles is not that sweatshop, that polluting industry. Now textiles is penetrating all segments of society. Aerospace, actually planes are made out of textiles. Your roads are made out of textiles. Your defense, people protecting the country use textiles extensively. We are making train parts for high-speed trains out of textiles. We are using fibers like glass and carbon, and we are weaving them using textile technologies. There is the whole AI piece around artificial intelligence assisted design. There is digital product creation. There's robotics. So it's a very, very exciting field. And I'd like you to think about that as you think about your future careers. So textiles is a strong place to be. China has, a lot of business has to be taken from China. And textiles has to go from this sweatshop polluting industry to, permeating the futuristic life in a very sustainable way. It just requires these 3 things: creativity, collaboration, and courage. And if you have these 3 things, you'll be able to conquer the world. Thank you very much.